Welcome back. Now this afternoon we're going to start with actually 4 of the 5 members of the Reference Steering Committee giving a presentation highlighting information from the survey. Now Kathleen mentioned that earlier today and you'll be seeing a bit more of this about now. So we're looking at this to show some of the points from the survey last year, and thank you so much for those of you who filled it in. It is available online to read as of about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and I'll be showing you where to find that later on. And it will be discussed at the meeting in Blacktown in August, as it will be used to help plan for next year. Now there's a mix of both optimism and uncertainty as people were filling this in and thinking about their workplaces. And there are a lot of issues which affect this. The results from the survey help to show how staff are thinking about this, and we'll be taking you through some of the results. And there really is a lot more you can read about it, because the survey has not been edited other than to de-identify results, so the answers are anonymous. So they're all as people wrote them. And there was a reason we didn't use fixed sort of drop-down text in most instances, was because we wanted a broader range of answers. We didn't want to preempt how people were thinking. Now often it's really fine to preempt how people are thinking, but this was kind of like, we don't know. So it needed to be more open questioning. So this shows some of the ideas raised in the survey. Now over to Catherine Johnson, and hopefully we'll hear her.
First off, Ellen, can you hear me?
Can you speak up a little bit louder, please?
Can you hear me, Ellen? Yay.
Yes.
Technology did not fail. Okay, so first off, we asked, we kicked off this survey by asking, what 3 things excite or interest you about providing information or reference service? Next slide, please. And so many of the answers here were about helping people. How so much of what we do involves exploring our own collections, both physical and online. And with every new question, there's something new to learn, both for us and the customer. And it really is why we do what we do. So in helping people and learning something new, and the challenge and the satisfaction of that, are the 3 things that overall in the survey came through resoundingly as what excited us and interests us the most about providing information and reference services. Next.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm going to take you through the next couple of slides. So the next question we asked was, what do you describe as an information or reference service? There were some really, really good points raised, showing a broad approach which fits with our speakers we had this morning. A lot of us are assisting our community with finding their answers, teaching them how to search the internet and use our online resources. The information needs could be for recreational or research purposes. Readers advisory, technology advice, assistance are starting to be the new traditional reference queries from the answers we were given. Or maybe the more popular ones we're getting bombarded with sometimes. Question 3 was, what 3 challenges do you see for information services for the next 12 months? This is to see what you saw in the future, the near distance future, and what possibilities we're thinking of. Shall I continue with this one, Ellen? Because I think it's you.
I can go on, or if you're happy to go on.
I might let you take a bit of this.
We practiced online. This is the first time we've been in a room together. So this word cloud shows the big issues. So as you can see, the information staff, people resources really came through strongly. And I just selected 3 answers to question 3 because I thought they seemed to raise even more questions. There are many more answers, so it is well worth having a look at the survey to read the answers. And some are reflecting these ideas of ongoing challenges of providing a reference and information service in a public library. Now, these aren't new challenges. I've been a librarian for a long time, and these continue to be issues which each library has to address. If you have solutions to these which work at your library, please get in touch so you can share your methods at future reference group meetings. But also keep in mind, it's not about perfect solutions, but about workable ones, which provide the results of a consistently informed staff to serve the community, thus really reflecting the points actually from all the speakers this morning.
I promise I'm here for a bit longer this time. So, question 4 was, what 3 opportunities do you see for the information services for the next 12 months? We all saw that what we offer is important. A few of us couldn't see a great future in the next 12 months due to many different reasons. Their answers are in the survey results. But others could see opportunities. They could see, looking into the short-term future, that new technology is important to our libraries and our communities, and the community's perception of what libraries and library staff role is in helping them navigate the new technologies for their digital literacy needs. Some mentioned using online communication for more community engagement and outreach. Also mentioned was enhancements to the library management system, improvements creating a one-stop place for the community, making access better for our community to find the information they need. Question 5 is a big question, and we had lots of answers for this question, lots of detail, which was really, really great. What are recent changes in information service at your library? Have new services been introduced? Have books been moved, removed? Has website access to databases changed? Is there a new service desk, no service desk, roving service? The group earlier took some answers from question 5. This is my perception of the answers from question 5. It was interesting to see the changes that have occurred in libraries across the state over a very, very short period of time. Is it due to Google, the internet, and the community's perception that they can get their answer quicker online? They don't have to look stupid in front of another person. And people talked about, by putting more information online for our community, those who are unable to physically get to the library are still able to access our services and resources. Many of us noted that our reference collection is shrinking as the staff and the community are using more online resources. Some libraries have introduced online services such as Ask a Librarian or a local history librarian and online help desks, which give our community access to more professional services when looking for their information. We combined questions 6 and 7 as they nested nicely together. What kind of training has supported those changes we talked about? And what kind of training do library staff receive to be able to provide information services? It was interesting to see that some libraries provide lots of training and others are finding it difficult due to different barriers, time, staff hours, small libraries, one-man libraries, which makes it hard to maintain training. These 2 questions highlighted the challenges we're facing when we're being asked to do more, but we can't do more. We can't find the extra time So what services are going to be cut? And from the results in this survey, information services is one area that seems to be getting cut. Some libraries are focusing on readers advisory training. Others are doing a lot of in-house training on an ad hoc basis. TAFE training for a lot of staff. And I can say I've just had a trainee do TAFE training. I'm based in Albury and she did her training through Ultimo at Sydney online. It was a fantastic experience for her. And other libraries do take up those options of the refresher training that the State Library offers. People talked about encouraging staff to become involved. I'm not sure if they mentioned that there was a barrier, that they find it difficult to encourage people, or whether they're thinking that's a way of getting more training out there. But also attend specialist group meetings. They're offered online now, so physically you can't get here. If you can make some time even to attend 2 hours, it's great, and support your staff too as well. It did come across that some libraries would like to see us share our training across the state. As Ellen mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be perfect, but sometimes some of us are so time-strapped, just anything would help so that we can make it more scalable and not recreate the wheel, which is something librarians seem to be really good at, is sharing. This is Ellen.
Now, this is one where I'm not actually adding notes, but I will go and read the results of the survey and also look at the minutes of the reference group meeting in Grafton. In both places, it showed a very interesting mix of professional reading, watching and listening. And some was very much based at work, others in people's own time. And I think it really highlights that there is not one way to do this, but many ways. And an important element is actually sharing what you've read, watched or listened to with other staff and them sharing back. You know, we can't all read everything, so it's kind of nice if someone said, I read this thing. I also find the idea of a professional reading group where a different journal article is discussed each month very interesting. I'm wondering if we could do something like this in New South Wales, using a relevant, library-related, journal article for one of the New South Wales net databases so everyone has access. So how do you include information services in resources, pop-up outreach and mobile? And I was actually thinking of this question when Kate and Ian were talking this morning, because some of their things were very much about taking services out and about. And the answer was very mixed. So as you can see, while some libraries were taking information out and about, others weren't. So really think about what your library is doing in this space when you're having pop-up library services, when you're having mobile, when you're, however you are taking the library out of the library. This one was also of interest because collectively we make it hard for people to ask questions when they aren't in the library. And with online catalogues, various e-content, as well as other digital and digitised content, we should be making it easier for people to ask us questions when they're not in the building and at different times. So as you can see, there were a reasonable number of online inquiry forms, telephone, social media. The other please describe were generally we do a few of these things together. Inquiry completion rate. Again, this was bringing these together to really see how people were thinking about using this data. You'll hear more about inquiry completion rate later on. And it showed that some people were really well informed in their libraries, how they were using the data. So you're not just counting it, you're actually being informed about what purpose the counting is being used for. But others, the manager may use it. Well, I hope someone's using it, otherwise it's pretty pointless just counting it to feed it to the state library. Much as it's a really good thing to do, but you should be using it locally as well. So this also moved on to show how different ones were using inquiry completion rates to think about services, staffing and other resources. This actually did seem good uses of it and show that even if there was a little bit of cynicism further down the page, it showed that it was being brought together as evidence. So that you're counting for a purpose and towards a larger strategic action of the library, rather than counting it as an end in itself. Over to Cherie.
Hello. Okay, so 16, press the arrow. Yep. All right, so what surprised you in the data you collected during recent inquiry completion rate surveys? Some interestingly universal results from this question. As we're all aware, the number of technology and equipment type questions is increasing, and typically these are more time intensive than traditional reference queries. Some of you commented, something to think about is that the length of these interactions. Is it being recorded somewhere? Is it being acknowledged? Is there anyone recording the time spent in ICT type queries? Some of you commented that customers only come to us as a last resort, whether they are unaware of what we can provide, approach us out of desperation, or there may be a language or a cultural barrier. As Ian was saying earlier today, also it's kind of an admission of failure. I couldn't find the information. It's not what we want our customers to do. Also, are we smiling enough? Are we approachable? Other notable responses were around the distribution of fiction and non-fiction queries, with non-fiction on the decreasing side, but still many libraries are reporting fairly strong loans. Maybe we're doing a lot of things right in terms of wayfinding, our OPAC systems. We've got good signage, good collection layouts. But it makes you think about the importance of wayfinding in the area of reference and information services. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. Question 17, what other statistics do you use to help you provide reference and information services? The question was addressed quite liberally here, but understandable, as isn't everything library related also in the realm of reference and information services? Something to think about. We have the usual suspects, technology and e-resources, borrowing trends. Head counts was another good one. And as we're finding that more and more people use our spaces for longer, they tend to stay than ever before. So how do people use the space? And it may seem a bit stalkerish, but this information is very, very important to gather, especially if you're planning a new library or you're planning a refurbishment, a new collection layout, something like that. Knowing how and why your customers are there is really important to know for creating future spaces for them. The library management system statistics. One answer was about the stats which feed into a collection rotation scheme, but it's not just about the number of loans, it's not about how many items you can fit on the shelf, it's about the popularity of subjects and authors at one branch over another branch, and things automatically rotating that branch, which I thought was fabulous, based on popularity. Another statistic was newspaper loan stats. So those libraries who have a lot of demand on the newspapers and you issue them from the desk, like where I work. And I recently gathered statistics on the borrowing and the age and gender of those who borrowed our newspapers, and found some interesting results, slight gender preferences for certain titles. It's a good stat to inform subscriptions, and also if you want justification for an additional online option. Requests for similar items as on display. So someone comes to the desk and asks you for something like that thing they saw on display. That's another stat that a library is collecting. Insight into the effectiveness of library displays. ICT request stats determine how long the query went, who was asking, what they were asking. We did one of these recently, which was, the results were very interesting. Staffing requirements during busy times, recording how many times someone comes out, that extra person from the back room, is that being recorded anywhere? That's a very valuable stat information in determining the true staffing requirements of your library. And lastly, collection analysis. Should more items of one collection be at one branch over another? So at my library service, we did this for Learning English collection, and we found clear differences in the loans of different levels from one branch to the next. So more basic, intermediate, advanced at different locations. Okay, last one for me. Does your library have defined reference or information desk shifts? Some people said, yes, we still have a reference desk. Your libraries are very diverse in how you're serving the reference and information needs of your communities. Reference desks, something separate from circulation or information desks, are still working well in some libraries, although they may not be manned full-time. They may be manned at busy times or at your big branch. The busy times, you know, that time after school where all the kids escape and then they come to the library and they've got way too much energy, or the rush to the PC time, the stampede time. They're good times to have extra people out. Okay. Very popular, obviously. A lot of libraries do this. One desk where anyone can answer any question, very popular. And it really highlights the importance of all staff being trained well, refresher training, if you're expected to answer the question. But then you always know there's someone else who may have more knowledge in that area, who you can go to as well. So the network. And then we have more defined types of reference desks. So an IT desk manned at certain times. Oh my goodness, people would love this at my branch. I think they'd turn up just for that IT desk time. And also a local studies desk, which is manned by staff who also get additional training studies. So, more results on the survey. I encourage you to read it. It's very interesting.
Okay, this is possibly one of my favourite questions because I also always like to know what people are using, what people are reading, where people are going to find the information that they're using to assist library members and visitors with their questions. So if we move on to the next slide, someone with magic fingers, thank you. There were many, many, many answers to the question about go-to resources. No, go back one, please. Thank you. And aside from online databases, the library catalogue was the clear winner as a trusted source of information because you can do so much with your catalogue. You can make resources available by cataloguing websites and databases and newspapers and everything you can lay your hands on or you think that people might want to know about and access. You can ensure you're using appropriate subject headings and make it easy for people to use your catalogue and navigate your OPAC. And I was really, really impressed by the number of library staff who answered that their catalogue, that their list of holdings of all the things that they have access to is their go-to resource and that they use it regularly because it should be your go-to resource. Now the next slide, please. Cool. This was our last question, and as you've noticed possibly as we've been running through these questions this morning, we haven't actually talked about all of the questions that were in the survey. And I cannot stress enough, and I know that the girls have made comments previously about you really need to go and look at this survey online, read through the answers and the collection of results that everyone across New South Wales libraries put in there. It's really worth looking at the opportunities and the issues that other library staff have raised in answer to these questions. And for our final slide, be inspired. There are many points of discussion in this survey that you can take back to your library. It's not about going, oh, yay, other libraries have the same problems we do. but instead considering the ideas that come through from reading it, that will in turn generate new ideas and new opportunities. And we would really like to encourage you all to be inspired by the people around you, to be inspired by the way libraries have approached a range of issues, and to be inspired by the experiences of other libraries. The survey is a sharing document, so please take the time to read these results and be inspired in your library. And for those who aren't sure where to find the survey, the link is on the agenda page of today's seminar on the wiki. Thank you all very much. And
Any questions? At least you got the point, go and look at the survey. Now, oh, actually, didn't need to do that one. Need to... Michael, you've got your slides here?
Yeah, that's right.
That one?
That's the one.
Okay, now, Michael Doran from Parramatta is actually speaking because of some of the information that was provided in the survey. There were questions that came out. So I think it'll be really interesting because how they're using data to look at service improvement at Parramatta. So over to Michael.
Thank you. Just got some introductory comments. I was going to try and wing it, and I thought that probably won't work. So just before I get to the presentation, I'll just introduce it with these words. At Parramatta Library, the call came from management for better information about the interactions between customers and staff. In particular, the sorts of information customers were asking for. So my team, Information and Customer Services, it's a recently formed amalgam of traditional reference and general customer service. The team was asked to design a tool to complement existing data sets such as ECR. The rationale, I think in public libraries, it can be easy for a distance to develop between management, absorbed as they frequently are in complex long-term projects, such as a new library at Wentworth Point at Parramatta. A couple of years ago, we went through an amalgamation. We lost a couple of branches, gained a couple. So you can imagine how easily their attention is drawn away from the day-to-day work, well, particularly the real-world interactions between library staff and customers, how that's evolving. So hopefully this tool, known in-house as the Parramatta Questions spreadsheet, has gone some way to bridging the gap. So that was the title I came up with, Customer Data as a Pathway to Service Improvement. So as I've said, management looking to gather more information about the interactions. We thought we'd use a spreadsheet. So one of the things I guess to emphasise is that the technology I've used is all very basic. So there's nothing to prevent anyone with any level of confidence really from trying to implement this. As a shared document, it is open simultaneously at all customer-facing service points of the Parramatta branch. So that's 6 PCs. So we're just using sharing technology within Microsoft Office and a protocol that staff use to, if they've made a change, immediately save it, that kind of thing. So to limit the impost on staff time, data is collected for just 2 weeks. And then this process is repeated after an interval, usually 6 months. And then the results are compared so we can see if anything is shifting. So this is the core of the spreadsheet. It's a list of common questions. That's just a very small snapshot there. There are 16 categories. We're looking at one complete category and a couple from the next. They're colour-coded, which help staff navigate. So the idea is that clicking anywhere in the cell of a question will increment the counter. So this isn't the live spreadsheet, so it won't work now. So instead of a staff member having to quickly type something out or find something and do something a little more complicated, all they have to do is left click, let's say, over, the H of how can I scan a document, and the 6 turns into a 7. A little VBA code runs behind each worksheet, and that's it just there. But my dirty little secret is that I found this code on Google. So to me, it may as well be a picture of a cat in terms of my understanding of it. I just Googled terms like VBA, increment counter, Excel, and found this. I only had to make a little adjustment. I think I changed the word row into column at one point, and it worked. So I was pretty shocked, actually. But this is now zooming out on the spreadsheet. So you can see where the questions are in those categories over on the left-hand side. There are a couple of other features I might mention. We've got a separate worksheet for each day that the data was collected. So I'm not sure if that's highly visible, but I've just got the worksheets named for the date, so 15th, 16th, etc. So that was one of the things we had to be careful to make sure we had the right date open. Obviously bad news halfway through the 16th to realise that everyone's got the tab open on the 15th. But so that was one feature just down the bottom there. Data collected is quite granular. There's 109 questions listed, arranged in these categories. So we're looking at only about 30 of them there. So one of the things we really needed was a form of navigation, something to get around the sheet more easily. So if you look up towards the top right, I've got these 16 categories and they're color-coded. So the way it worked with the live spreadsheet was if you clicked on any of those, it automatically scrolled down for you and took you to that part of the sheet. So staff progressively got used to that. There's also a section just over here on the lower right-hand side, which is just a little set of instructions for staff. So I'm trying to bear in mind that there are staff members that might only work on the desk for 3 hours a week and that they're hardly going to remember all the detail about this new thing. So you're doing everything you used to do at the desk, and now you've also got this complicated thing in front of you. So I had this set of instructions just there, and that repeated up and down the page, so it was always pretty easy to find. And it's just making some points like if you accidentally click the wrong question, you can quickly correct that. I draw attention to the fact that there are some new common questions added in this particular survey, and I'm telling them what rows to look at. So just a few details like that. And at the bottom of each of the worksheets for a particular day, there were the space for uncommon questions. So we had a lot of common questions where you're kind of, pushing a particular thing a customer has said to you into a category. And sometimes you just can't do that. I noticed as people were using the spreadsheet that there seemed to be a therapeutic value for staff. And if you look at the first question up there, I think a lot of people got a little relief from writing down questions like that, like, are you laughing at me? With a bit of, stress possibly in that situation. And so that was a way of relieving it. But also, though, it's I think, a valuable way of passing that kind of information up to senior staff who don't have those sorts of interactions. They could quickly read through a couple of hundred of these and get maybe a better sense of, the vibe of being on the desk. And the other thing was that uncommon questions that occurred frequently enough would then graduate through to the next, into the common questions for the next data period. So you can imagine that at the end of that spreadsheet, it was fairly easy just to have another sheet which added all of the questions together. And then you could sort the questions into, the most prominent ones, which is what we're looking at here for one of the survey periods. So the top question is, may I collect my reservation? So obviously we don't have reservations and on hold shelf in a public area. So that's the number one. You're probably noticing there's quite a bit of print, scan, copy, so that seems to be a common theme across a lot of libraries at the moment, that we're getting a lot more of those equipment-based questions, and we've got a bit of data there to back that up. So you can also look at the data that we've collected in terms of categories. So we've got print, scan, copy over here was the biggest category. That was August 2017. And we brought in a new system which really in most ways was superior. Almost every way was superior to the preceding system. And I think a lot of people were hoping that that column would shrink. So I'll just show you what the next slide looks like. This is for a few months later. And instead of shrinking, it's gone up. So I guess that's understandable when you think that a new system, there's a lot of new things to learn. I think that's one of the kind of good news, bad news things with printing, copying, scanning, those sorts of services, that there's so much more you can do now. When I started working in libraries, a photocopier was, you just plonk the sheet down in one place, you hit a green button, put a 20-cent coin, maybe not in that order, but anyway, it all worked. And now you can zoom in two different dimensions at different ratios and color. You can scan to email. In a way, it's a much better service, but it's a lot harder to navigate. So we're getting a lot more inquiries from customers. So that can be, I guess, one of the characteristics, I guess, of working in an environment that's increasingly dominated by technology, that there's so much to explain. So when I was presenting the results of this spreadsheet to management, there was a little bit of interpretation. So talking to other people in the team about what the data might mean, we came up with a few observations there. Might read through a couple. So continuation of previously observed trends, a shift in clientele towards people dependent on the library for internet access, clerical and office processes, dependence on the library for access to resources vital to modern life, government departments reducing practical assistance with forms, and also things like instances of customers travelling from one branch to another hoping that they get another 90 free minutes of internet access. So also the clientele skewing towards lower socioeconomic profiles, and a hollowing out of what I would call artist impression people. I think they're still in the library, but they have access to such, incredibly good resources via state library databases, our own Parramatta databases. I think a lot of those people are quite self-sufficient now, so we're not interacting with them so much at the desk. I call them artist impression people, in the sense that whenever you see an artist impression of a new building, there'll be people, there's a lot of diversity built in, people from different racial backgrounds, etc., different ages, but they all seem to be in the same tax bracket. So that's the one thing they kind of miss out. And I think that's one of the things that was coming through in the data, that there is quite a range in the socioeconomic profile that we see working at the library at Parramatta. The other thing we did in looking at the results of the survey, brainstormed particular questions like how can we make it easier for customers to do things like print, scan, etc. We have a lot of people from ESL backgrounds. So we had the idea of some instructions. So this looks like it's for an overhead projector or something, but just to give an impression of what it might look like, if we had graphical instructions, possibly like a few hundred copies that people could take away and use to talk themselves to. A lot of people really want to be self-sufficient. And something like that, they might actually get through the process of scanning and not have to consult staff. So obviously we're happy to help, but if they see that we're busy, a lot of people just will not approach the desk. So that was one idea we came up with. Other ideas like signage, improving signage, if we're getting a lot of questions about where bathrooms are, or maybe need to be better, that kind of thing, so wayfinding. And I think that's the end of the presentation. I just had a closing comment to make as well. So in parting, I would offer that the Parramatta questions spreadsheet, imperfect as it is, does transmit some fragments of the customer's collective voice to decision makers. In that sense, it has a significance for an earlier theme of today's seminar, the relation of justice and library work. Justice inevitably has its beginning in proper respect for a voice. Thank you.
Any questions for Michael? I've got the... Oh, thank you. And Michael, maybe if you could go back to the microphone, that'd be great. Thanks.
Where can I get a copy of the spreadsheet?
Available via FPOS. No, of course they're free. So yeah, if anyone would like to contact me, I'm happy to provide my email address and I can send one through. It's not a very big document. I think someone in a private library at Westmead Hospital was asking about it too. So that's just a person that's connected to someone I work with at Parramatta. So yeah, happy to hand that over.
Different question? No, we want it now.
I think it's a question, obviously, for any of the managers in the room. How did the staff actually respond to implementing this? Because, I mean, obviously, there is a lot of stuff happening on desk when you're there.
Yeah.
And without telling you what library I'm from, we always have trouble even filling in the ECR stats that go around once every 3 months. So I can imagine there was probably a lot of pushback on that, such a comprehensive list of questions as well.
I have to admit that it shocked me actually that staff were using it so well. I think they saw it as a real opportunity for them to have their voice, for them to be recognised in terms of exactly what they're doing. I think they knew it was going to be heading towards management. As I say, I think there's a therapeutic dimension. So it sounds funny, but sometimes it's odd questions that we get that may have an element of stress. It can be just nice to type those out. I think there was a sense of a kind of new communication that was happening. And yeah, as I say, I was pretty surprised. As you say, we've got enough to do. And then to kind of master a tool that's fairly complicated. Yeah, so... Oh, I get a little bit when I was setting the thing up. I'd go around in the morning and make sure that it was open to the right worksheet. You did a little bit of, tiny bit of eye rolling, like, oh, we're doing that again, but not in an aggressive or resistive kind of way. Just yeah, it's very. I have to really acknowledge the staff who actually made the whole thing work. Yeah.
At one of your branches, or was it done across the Parramatta collective?
We actually only did it at the main branch at Parramatta. I think it probably works best that way, in the sense that the data that you collect is very much about, the set out of a particular library, the way that's working, the way people are finding themselves around the space. So I think that might all get a bit muddied if you ran it in 6 places simultaneously and just had all the data piled up. Oh, well, I might be talking to you afterwards then. I don't know how to do that. So. Thank you.
That was great. I feel really inspired and feel that I'm asking people to underachieve by just doing the inquiry completion rate. No, different places, but that really was, I thought it was really great to see how the stats were being used in that. Now, you will have heard talk about wikis today. So this is actually the new public library wiki, being used by most of the working groups. Each working group is listed here. It's not an exclusive thing, so if people aren't listed here, like the document delivery one, they're using another format. and their material is going to get linked across. But for instance, for today, the seminar is here. People have got links to how to get in through Blue Jeans, various sessions, etc. And then on this same page, after the event, the videos will be loaded in. The slide shares and links will be going here as well. How do you get to it? I am tempted to say it's via the green button, but it is. So scroll right to the bottom of the page, right down. So public library services. Then services. Information for working groups. Yeah, no, it's really easy to get to. This is why we run Collect community training. So then, wikis and blogs. New public library wiki. Now, the reason there is a new wiki is because the old one locked people out. We had a lockout last year for, I forget whether it was 6 or 8 weeks. It was really unpleasant. You kind of need to be able to use a wiki to be able to use a wiki. Now, if you want to join the wiki, and really anyone can join, click on About the Wiki. Fill in your information there. There's a Survey Monkey. You fill it in. Kate O'Grady, Miley Joseph, or I upload the data. We do it once a week. It's only so exciting. But if you desperately need to edit the wiki straight away, just email one of us and we'll add you on straight away. But most people, there isn't an emergency for wiki editing. Read the editing conventions instructions. I will say this again, read the editing conventions instructions. When you have multiple working groups using the one wiki, you can't just call your minutes date. No, you really can't call your minutes date of meeting. You really, even date of meeting, library name. No, really, that is not acceptable. No one will find them. Do you know how many working group meetings are held in substitute X library here? So it's about the only page that there's a whole lot of protocol around, but the minutes have a very precise protocol. And broadly, each working group page has part of working group name in URL. So the reference and information service group is pretty well going to have RISG in every URL. Makes it easier when you're using a wiki that other working groups are using too. There's a page called January. I have to track that one down and explain to the person who put it that January is not helpful. But everyone's getting new at editing. It's not a problem. These pages can get rolled back. It's really easy to delete them. And even if you delete them accidentally, it's really easy to roll back a page you deleted accidentally. It will tell you you're deleting it, so, you know, you get a warning. But nice thing, register. Go and play. And go and play could be as simple as edit, change. But get your registration before you desperately need it. Easy to use. There aren't, other than the convention section, there isn't a list of instructions for how to edit the wiki, because the nice people at DocuWiki, the software behind this, they've got a whole wiki on how to edit the wiki. So we weren't going to redo you're getting the picture. It's about not reinventing the wheel. And if someone else has written instructions, that's a thing of beauty. But for conventions, it's a good idea to have them listed. So go and play. The seminar will be here at some point once I've uploaded the videos and everyone's given me their slides as a useful resource. But hey, right, working group. You can already look at last year's meeting, and John did the welcome there again. You can look at the year before. You can see slightly different editing styles, but you get the information. That's the main thing. So the information has been brought over. So, wiki, go and play, enjoy. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about inquiry completion rate data because there's something I want to do with the data, but I need your help. So, hands up who actually collects inquiry completion rate data. That's a thing of beauty. So you're having fun with it, collecting this week in your library. It's a good thing. Now, because we like quoting the Library Act here, And it's really good because free basic reference services are actually in the Library Act, which is why it's nice to quote the Library Act. And this includes things covered in the inquiry completion rate. So going back to the past, thanks to the joys of having Bibliostat back, have any of you been playing with the Bibliostat database? Find out who's got the login at your library and go and play. It's so much fun. Years worth of statistical data. So I had a brief look. I wasn't going to look at every year, but in 2007, there were 3.6 million information requests. In 2012, there were 5.3 information requests. But the most recent data we have at present is 2016-2017. Now, we've only been collecting the customer service requests for the last couple of years. They weren't previously wrapped into the information requests. What this shows is there are less inquiries across the state. This shows the data for 76 library services. We have 89 library services in New South Wales, just to give you a gauge for how much data. Now, this is the current collecting sheet. I know it's really hard to read, but not nearly as much a thing of beauty as the Parramatta collecting sheet. So I do feel a little bit shy, but we'll just have to cope with that. But it has got more columns than it used to have because a small group of people who said we want more data added more data. Now, the thing is, you can collect whatever fields you want to collect for those. So if one time you really wanted to see how community information was going, how, well, it's there. But if there was a very specific targeted local collecting that you wanted to do, you can add that in. And no one will complain. It's a good thing. Now, because this is a bit hard to read on the screen, I've broken this down for the next two ones. So make sure each time you do the collecting that you actually have a look at the definitions. It's always a good idea to refresh with how you're thinking about it. And the point of these is to help you better understand your services at a less sophisticated way than the amazing sheets at Parramatta. I'm going to have, yes. I really don't think I would get any encouragement to suggest that we did that at an entirely statewide level, although I am having evil thoughts about that. I think it'll take a really long time before they can go beyond being evil thoughts. Now, and then again, we've got customer service requests broken down by category. Now, the thing is, currently our spreadsheets on the State Library website only allow you to enter your data at information request and customer service request, not with all the helpful breakdowns. But there's a spreadsheet on the way. Yeah, super exciting. So hopefully this will be available in August. That's the aim. Big thanks to Bruce Morgan at Parramatta. You guys must do really fun things with spreadsheets at Parramatta. And thanks also to Sutherland, Richmond, Upper Clarence and Coffs Harbour for providing the test data for this. So this is actually a week's worth of data, mostly, although I ran out of puff, so I kind of didn't do the complete data entry. I will admit to that one. But this shows 1 day of data for 3 libraries. That was enough to anonymise it. Now, for local planning, obviously, it's helpful to be able to see this data branch by branch, etc. But for me, it's helpful to be able to see the big picture things. Now, this shows the total for 1 week. I know this is hard to read. I have blown it up as much as I could. But what I think is worth looking at is, what are the questions that come to you from looking at this data? What stands out? I actually think one thing that's interesting is that about 1/3 of the total service assistance is information requests, 2/3 are customer service requests, but however 1/3 of the total is administrative. So that's actually where I'd be going, what is administrative? So administrative is really useful stuff. Crucial. But just as Parramatta was looking at other better processes that we can actually be spending a bit less time on administrative, other things we can do with streamlining reservations, other things we can do to make it easier to get a replacement card, other things we can do to simplify bookings so that we're not having to do this, so that we can do something else. Not that these things aren't important, they are really, but maybe there are strategies. Because they're just such a big area, I'd be wanting to do some further drilling down, I think, to see. But maybe the administrative is a lot of membership. That's a good thing. again, it's important to ask questions. I also think that the number of local studies and family history assistants is low. So maybe what is something as simple as people forgot to count. It's not always a complicated answer. Did local studies need a promotion? What other questions are you seeing from this data? And because it's anonymised, you're not picking on a library. It's helpful. See, to me, the ESL and community languages are also low. Maybe those got wrapped up as general subject inquiries or author title. Or again, there's a whole lot of reasons. But I think this kind of shows why it's good really exploring the data. And from what came through in the survey, everybody doesn't get the results reflected back to them organisationally. You're counting away, but you're not maybe even seeing the total for the organisation. And it is actually helpful seeing the total so you can ask the questions, or even ideally, if you like a multi-site site, you'd actually want to see your totals for each separate branch as well as total, because each site will have different patterns of use. So one site might be the one that's really heavy hitting for all the local studies inquiries. So maybe if you've got all your local studies collections and the specialist staff in one site, but you're still going to have a small number of local studies coming in from other places as well. And if you're not getting those small number of other stats, are you not letting people know they can ask a local studies inquiry at a branch library, for instance? I don't know. So I think it's really important to kind of explore this data in depth. And to help encourage that happening locally, I would like, after the August collecting, if you can send your completed spreadsheets, and I really know you cannot read this, which will look something like this. So your spreadsheet that you have entered all your branch data in, all your site data, and you just email me the one spreadsheet, and then that will give me the corner bit that I can use. Now, I am kind of terrified by the sheer amount of data entry I'm still going to have to do for however many library services. But I think it would be very helpful to get a statewide picture, as well as to encourage you to be using the new spreadsheets for your data collection locally. So it's got both of those elements. One, it allows me to reflect back to you a statewide picture, but locally it's encouraging you to use this more detailed breakdown of this more detailed breakdown across a week, because you've had the sheets where you can collect this, but you haven't had the next layer of stats to make it a next layer, like the spreadsheets, to make it easier for you to analyze this data internally. So it works for you, it works for me. So hopefully these sheets will be available in August, before the August collecting. That's the aim. They've been tested with two sites, with two different sites, and at this stage it's a case of multiplying the sheets out. So those of you who are using the existing sheets, they'll look pretty much the same, except they'll have a few more categories. So back to this. This is the most recent data we have. We are currently collecting the 2017-2018. We've got a small number of libraries yet to submit their data. If you're one of those, you know you're the ones we're waiting on the data from. So any questions about Yay? And if you think that it would be really helpful for me to work towards us having a statewide collection of the degree of depth of Parramatta, flick me an email. As a serious thing of, is this actually something we think about? But the capacity to do that, I don't know. I think it's definitely something I think that having a lot of strong local support would make a difference.
And at Albury, we have another branch and they're also customer service, so they have access to Qflow. They have an iPad on their desk. Couldn't afford to put it at our Albury. We actually put an iPad on our desk and we put all those categories in. I think the app's called Qflow. It just makes it so easier because staff just come across and they just press the button that matches what the question was. And then at the end of the day, you just send the results. It actually turned over for you. And it's really quite handy. I'll send some more information. I think it's called Q-Tally, but I'll send more information because I wasn't the one who put it on. But I was one of the ones who said we need something easier than these sheets of paper sitting on our desk.
That would be great.
To go missing all the time. And yeah, so cool. The only thing with the firing completion is you have to go over 2 screens. So many categories.
Anyone else? That would be great, and we can include the link to that in the wiki.
And I'll take some of those screenshots.
That would be great. We can include those also in the wiki.
Yep.
The what?
I just like having a place that a lot of people can edit and add information. And it doesn't have to come down to kind of like a bottleneck. At this stage, we don't have a lot of people who are doing it, but there's been a series of working bees across different working groups and between different working groups. Reference didn't have a lot to bring over other than kind of seminars and minutes, and so they came over fairly easily. Some of the other working groups, local studies, readers advisory, they've got to have some pretty hard conversations about bringing some stuff over. They haven't had those hard conversations yet. They know they've got to have them. I think it'll come down to 3 or 4 people who get really keen, and like it's fast once you get into it. Yeah. Okay, now really exciting. We get to hear. I'm not the only person here wearing my tick badge today. I haven't worn it much, but I thought I've got it. I should wear it today. Alia is running a campaign on truth, information, and knowledge, and so truth, integrity, and knowledge. And that actually really fits with what else we've been hearing about today. So it's great to be able to hear from Rob Thompson about this campaign. So please join with me in welcoming Rob.
Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to reiterate on some of those results from the reference group. That idea of why do you want to do reference, the idea of helping people and learning something new, and the challenge and the satisfaction of finding the answer. All those journeys down various rabbit holes and the thrill of the chase. When I worked, well, you'll find out where I worked. That was always one of the things that really got me going. And the other thing I'd like to say is that the most consistent thing in libraries is change. So, let's begin. Okay. Bujari Gamawara, good day. First of all, I want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I extend my greetings to all my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters, both here at the State Library and across this great state of New South Wales, and to their elders, both past, present and emerging. By way of introduction, I am Rob Thompson. As of March the 1st, which for those of you of a Welsh extraction, I have a Welsh wife, will know is St David's Day, and I am now the Alia New South Wales State Manager. I've been in libraries all my life, starting at the Curry Curry Library when I was a preschooler, many years ago. And I began working in libraries in 1992 at the BHP Steelworks Library and qualified as a library technician in 1997. I must say that about a week into my starting the job in 92, suddenly went, what the hell have I been doing with my life? This makes so much sense. I was at BHP BlueScope Steel in the Steel Research Laboratories Library until the end of 2009, where there was a restructure. I thought the library would survive. It did. I didn't. And then from 2010, I've been delivering the Diploma of Library Information Services course from TAFE Wollongong. However, this term, for various complicated reasons, I am now delivering the Cert 4 and Diploma training at Ultimo TAFE on Tuesdays and Mount Druitt TAFE on Thursdays. Although this morning I was at the opening of the refurbished Penrith Library, which was looking extraordinarily good. So I'm here this afternoon in my capacity as Alia New South Wales State Manager to talk about the 2019 Australian Library and Information Association and the Freedom of Access to Information Resources campaign around TIC, Truth, Integrity and Knowledge. The principles of TIC complement and feed into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The aim of the UN SDGs is to leave no one behind, and ALIA is advocating for the adoption of the SDGs as libraries can be and are key institutions in helping to achieve these goals. Of prime interest to libraries is Goal 16, which says promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels, as this includes access to information as a prime target. Target 16.10 says ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. And if you're not familiar with the UN SDGs, I'd urge you to have a look at them, as there are many roles that libraries can play in helping communities achieve them. With the background of the UN SDGs, in 2019, ALIA and FAIR are celebrating the 10 ways that library and information services professionals support and promote truth, integrity and knowledge. The campaign will focus on why librarianship is one of the most trusted professions in Australia and how people working in libraries, whether LIS qualified or from some other discipline, promote the free flow of information and ideas in the interests of all Australians. It will remind people that in a society driven by that terrible word, fake news, and the 24-hour media cycle, they can rely on libraries for quality information. Through 2019, 10 guest bloggers from the library and information profession will write articles for the campaign highlighting how and why their chosen principle is so important. These blog articles are and will be available via the FAIR website. The TIC campaign is designed to promote the ethical basis of our profession, to explain why this is important and to show how our work makes a positive difference to everyday lives across Australia. The TIC campaign has been developed with support from the ALIA New Generation Advisory Committee. So the 10 ways are, which I've just realised I haven't hit the button. There you go, sorry. So the 10 ways are: librarians have always been trusted professionals, and this is still the case. Everyone studying for a library qualification learns about the profession's ethics and values. When people join ALIA, they are confirming their commitment to promoting the free flow of information and ideas in the interest of all Australians. To be a trusted professional is not a responsibility that library staff undertake lightly, even when they don't consciously realise that they're doing it. Library staff have an overwhelming commitment to service provision, making it virtually impossible for them to resist applying the profession's values and ethics to every challenge for the provision of accurate, timely and impartial information to every request for assistance. Tenacity is in our DNA, but library staff do much more for the cohorts and communities that they serve. They provide places for information, for education, for recreation and for integration that enhance the livability of their communities. Freedom of information. An underlying principle of the library and information profession is that it's a basic human right to have freedom of access to information, ideas and works of imagination without bias or censorship. This principle upholds a number of other human rights, as information in all its forms is fundamental to understanding yourself, your place in the world, how to exercise your rights as a citizen and express yourself. Knowledge is power, so it's important that everyday people have access to a choice of information without too many barriers being imposed. And you can probably spread that out to communities within our places that we're in. We help ensure that people have access to information without bias or censorship. Some libraries use internet filters to support cyberspace experiences for children, but we are against high-level government restrictions on internet content and have campaigned successfully against this over the past decade. We also help people to navigate government freedom of information request processes. Library and information workers can help clients become critical users of information, to build critical digital literacy skills which challenge bias and deliberate manipulation. We can share tools and curate information in ways that support particular social justice themes and points of view to counter disinformation that might be encountered. Evidence-based. We identify and evaluate information sources which help people reach their own well-informed decisions about critical issues. We consider the source, the credibility of the author, the wider context and the supporting evidence in order to authenticate information. Having knowledge and experience in evidence-based practice is another important part of what library professionals do best and why librarianship is one of the most trusted professions in Australia. Digital expertise and inclusion. Inclusion as a topic covers a broad church from gender and sexual identity to culture, to religion, to language, to remoteness, to age, to living with differences in abilities. Inclusion is about our ability to appreciate, acknowledge and value difference. Inclusion from a digital perspective means addressing difference when we are thinking about accessing or disseminating information online and when harnessing technology. Library and information professionals know how to use the best aspects of technology to find authoritative information and how to avoid the pitfalls. We can explain to library users how algorithms, cookies and other devices influence search results and help advertisers target potential buyers. In an increasingly online world, people can be left behind if they can't afford new technologies or don't have the connectivity or lack the skills. And it was interesting in talking about Parramatta and their experience of people shopping around to get the extra 90 minutes of free access. Library staff are at the front line of initiatives to enable all Australians to become digitally included and to participate in the activities online, not least engaging with e-government. If we fail to address the issues of digital exclusion, we will leave behind not only the 10% of Australians who are not online currently, but additionally those who may be online, but who are inadvertently excluded from much of the capability that comes with it, because of the exclusion that occurs in our blind spots. We must be alive to this challenge. Our role is paramount in helping to make that portal as wide and as clear as possible, fueled by the integrity to welcome difference and celebrate diversity. It is then we will stem the digital divide and increase access to truth and knowledge for all. Indigenous knowledge. Librarians work respectfully with Indigenous knowledge, the stories, the artefacts, the images, the artworks and the documents that form collections of First Nations materials. We seek permission for access, consult with community elders and use established protocols to ensure that knowledge is handled sensitively and appropriately. Last Friday I listened to Ben Quilty being interviewed by Julian Burnside at the Sydney Writers' Festival, and he made the observation that growing up he, and I, probably most of you, heard nothing about Indigenous culture, history or experiences. We now know from people like Bruce Pascoe and Bill Gamage and Billy Griffiths, amongst many others, just how much we have missed out on. For far too long, the only voices we have heard are those of the coloniser and not those of the colonised. We can look at a map of New South Wales and the Indigenous nations contained within its borders, and if we look at it with Western eyes, we see hard borders between each nation here on the map. But in Indigenous culture, the borders were more porous, fuzzier and less distinct. But each group had their own distinctive ways of being, their own distinctive languages and their own stories, which we need to be mindful of and to take the time to sit with and listen to the traditional owners so that we can treat their knowledge and their stories sensitively and appropriately. Freedom of expression. We believe in free speech and the freedom of expression. To quote the IFLA principles of freedom and of expression and good librarianship, Libraries contribute to the development and maintenance of intellectual freedom and help to safeguard basic democratic values and universal civil rights. Libraries continue to be that most generous and democratic spaces that we have in our society. All are welcome, so long as they all behave in various ways. Equity. We're working to ensure that everyone and anyone in Australia can join a library, borrow books, use PCs, seek the expert help of library staff and source the information that they need. There are still some barriers to library membership, for example, fines for overdue books and the need to have a permanent address to register, but these are being removed in some locations and being tackled in others. Privacy. Libraries continue to promote the right to privacy in the digital age. We're concerned about excessive data collection, hacking, and the harvesting of personal information for political and commercial gain. And whilst that has happened at government levels and commercial levels with Facebook breaches and all of that sort, as far as I know, it's never happened at a library level. At the same time, we support aggregated data, stripped of personal identifiers, being made available to researchers for social benefits, including reference queries and the health sector, which leads to open access. We support the principle of open access, especially for government-funded research. Open access enables the reuse of data, building on the work of others and advancing the world's knowledge at a faster rate than has been possible before. Quality metadata, applied by librarians, makes this data more easily discoverable. And if you want to, I would recommend the 23 Research Data Things program run by the Australian National Data Service as a way to get your head around the huge quantity and variety of data and data sources that is now available. And I firmly believe that in coming years, anyone with a librarian or library technician skills and training will be in much demand in organisations to work and manage data resources, much as we have been managing text-based resources in the past and present and future, I guess. And lastly, collaboration. Librarianship is an ethical profession and one that thrives on partnerships, collaboration and sharing. We work with government, with academia, with corporate and civil society organisations as a force for good. When you go home and your kid asks, what have you been doing today? I've been working, but it's a force for good. This makes libraries a natural partner for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I tell that to my daughter and she goes, rolls her eyes. Yeah, what have you really been doing? So this makes libraries a natural partner in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals identified in the UN 2030 Agenda. I've often told my students that whilst libraries have traditionally been seen as places of information and entertainment, more and more libraries are places of collaboration, creativity, community and cooperation. We are one of the most trusted professions. When people like Rudy Giuliani are saying truth isn't truth, the community turns to us to verify the facts, to discover the evidence, to know what truth is. We know that not everything is available via Google, and everything that is not always right or true. We have 5 millennia of history for acquiring, collecting, organising, providing access to the world's knowledge and information. We have been here for a long time, and if you've ever watched Doctor Who, you'll know we'll be here for a long time to come. Standard Doctor Who reference. Tick. We stand on the shoulders of giants. The library as an institution has existed since the rulers of the Sumerians established them in Nippur in the 3rd century BCE. But this is only part of the larger story. Storytelling is as old as humanity itself. We are the keepers of stories. As the State Library says, all great stories come back to us. We are the keepers of stories, but these are only stories in a physical form. Our Indigenous brothers and sisters have an oral tradition that dates back 65,000 years. In their songs, their Dreamtime myths and legends and stories, and in their songlines, Their understanding of and history of this country is a reminder to us that storytellers and the keepers of stories have always been trusted and revered within their communities. The truth is that we are at the spear point of a long line of trusted professional and non-professional storytellers, and the shaft of that spear reaches back 65,000 years. Stories propel us forward as a community and as a society, but thinking that the last 230 years of stories is more important than the previous 65,000 years is pretty frankly ridiculous and insulting. All stories are important in helping us understand who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. With climate change and the predictions of sea level rises, we can learn from the stories of the past, the stories told by the first peoples of this land who have experienced the consequences of sea level rise before. As a society, we need to be engaging with those who can tell stories of when the seas rose and flooded homes and country and caused massive relocation. For the sake of our institutions, and perhaps more importantly for our collections, it may indeed be time for us to both metaphorically and literally take the higher ground. So ALIA's campaign for truth, integrity and knowledge draws on the long history of libraries and our well-established reputation for integrity and access to highlight the role that all of us as trusted professionals can play in our communities for helping our town, our suburb, our city, across New South Wales, achieve the goals of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and leave no one behind. There's even a thick pledge, which I'll now read. I seek out the most comprehensive and evidence-based results to every query so as to not knowingly present fiction as truth. I demonstrate integrity in providing users with the information they need without bias or censorship. I support and will aid the transformation of information into knowledge, and I hold the skills and qualifications required to achieve these things. So keep standing up for truth, maintain your integrity, and continue to promote knowledge. And as you go out to vote next Saturday and collect your democracy sausage, remember to vote one, vote #library or #vote-library. And I'd just like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you all today, and I hope to meet many more of you across the state in the course of my role as ALIA New South Wales State Manager. And just a reminder that together we are stronger. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Rob? Oh. Well, please join with me in thanking Rob. That was great. Now, as you've noticed, our program's changed today from when you initially booked in. That's because we've had people have some work crises and be unwell. Now, Luke Briscoe was due to speak this afternoon, however, he is sick and is unable to present. So I will be organising a video conference with him at a later time so that you can find out about Indigi-Labs and their work, particularly in the area of Indigenous science. You'll be notified over both the reference email list and PLN. Seeing as he's actually sick at present, I'm not going to get in touch with him for a few weeks because I figure that would be a bit rude. So today has an unexpectedly early finish. Use the opportunity in whatever way you wish. It could be with having a talk with a colleague here who you haven't met before. It could be in going back to your workplace if you're not having to wait for a 7 p.m. flight. Some of you are waiting for 7 p.m. flights. Yes, so apologies that this happened at short notice, but illness and work crises are kind of hard to go with. So thank you for coming along today. Please complete the evaluation survey that will be emailed out to you probably tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Tonight.
Oh.
I'll just sort of go back now.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Oh, stop recording.